welcome back to my podcast. This is Everything Under the Sun with your host, Sabby Speaks. So, I'm your host, Sabby Speaks. Today, as you can see, I have a wonderful guest here, and we're going to get into some juicy topics. But first, we have to go ahead and start with our intro. So, as I already mentioned, I'm Sabby Speaks. I'm your host. This is Everything Under the Sun, and that's under without an E. So, if you're new to this podcast, we talk about literally everything under the sun, but we take it from a spiritual perspective. And so if you tune into our last podcast, I talked about ministry moments. And so it was our very first video podcast on YouTube. So go ahead and check it out because it's really cool. But I'm going to go ahead and get into our weather check. Now, as you know, I live in Atlanta. Everybody wants to say that it's not Lawrenceville, it's not Atlanta, but it is Atlanta. So the high is 81, the low is 60, and it is 77 degrees, but it is hot over here under the sun. And so hot stands for honest, open, and transparent. And conversation usually gets that deep. So today we have a juicy topic, but I'm going to go ahead and allow my friend to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Charles Miller, and I'm excited to be talking everything under the sun without a E.
Can you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
22 years old, Ghanaian. That's really all. I mean, that's what you need to know.
See, okay. Do you mind mentioning like your major?
Yeah, I'm studying radiation technician. So radiation technician.
Okay, because when I first met this dude, you, I was like, "Hey, radiation technician."
No, it's not complicated. You just like when you go, let's say for a cancer patient or anybody that needs to be scanned in a machine. That's all I do. I put them in the machine, then I just kind of read the results of the machine and tell the doctor. So
wow, I'm like, your parents must be real proud of you because it's giving doctor, lawyer, and engineer all together. Awesome. Yeah. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about African culture, a whole bunch of like different topics and stuff like that. So I want to throw it at you, with the first question.
Yep. So my first question is, how important is your culture or your African culture to you?
I feel like my culture definitely defines me in the sense of every time someone sees me, like they're like, "Oh, who are you?" I put out there that I'm Ghanaian. I put out there that I'm African. And I think that I allow that to shape people's understanding of me because for first and foremost, like if you're African, you mean another African, you kind of like share that basic ground of like, oh, okay, we're kind of raised the same way, kind of have the same thought process, but I don't allow it to overtake my identity as a Christian. I always put that first before I allow it to define me as like a Ghanaian. Yeah,
that's a good one. So growing up, you came to America, right?
Oh, wait, what about you?
What about me? How's it important? I mean, to me, honestly, culture is very important. Like, culture might as well be 50% of me because your culture defines, who raises you, how you grow up, how you look at things, how you look at other people.
Okay. So when you go around, like when you're introducing yourself, are you like, my name is Charles, I'm from Ghana, or?
Nah, I mean, you can tell. You look at me, I'm African, but I don't need to maybe, introduce myself to other Africans, that I'm from Ghana and stuff like that. But, like, I mean, like you said, like your culture is not everything. You still got your spiritual aspect. You're still a Christian over anything else, and you're still yourself. So I mean, I'm still myself. I might not be the typical Ghanaian, but I always identify with Ghanaian.
What is the typical Ghanaian?
Man, we know the typical guy.
Do we?
I don't want to blast anybody out, but we know typical Ghanaian. Like you see, like there's people that look fresh off the boat. You know the phrase,
okay.
Yeah. So I mean, like sure, like I might not have the thickest of accents, or I might not speak Chi, but I do speak my own language, and I might not do necessarily all the Ghanaian things, but I'm still Ghanaian.
See, when you speak generally like that, I gotta pick at you. So when you say you don't do the Ghanaian things, like what are Ghanaian things?
Like I think a lot of Ghanaians we're I don't want to say loud people, but we're enthusiastic people. We're outside people. A lot of Ghanaians are extroverts. You don't rarely meet a lot of introvert as Ghanaians. We're very happy, praiseful people. We're very religious people. And at the same time, some of us are short-tempered people that like to gossip. Ghanaians are just a very communicative and, talkative, and it's not a bad thing, but it's just our qualities and our traits.
Okay. That's valid. I think you really summed up like Ghanaian people really, really well. And so even though we're both Ghanaian, I was born in Italy. My dad is Ashanti and my mom is Fanti, so I call myself Ashafanti.
Yeah.
But how would you define like where you are in from Ghana?
To me, I'm an Nzima. Both my parents are Nzima, so I always Nzima. And like one thing that I really love is that Nzima people, we're not the largest group in Ghana. So it kind of gives you like a specialty, or like, I'm one of a few. So
Okay.
yeah.
One of the small. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I think one of the things like when I think of Enzima, I think of the food
Yeah.
because like here in Georgia, I mean y'all Enzima is like there's like a whole group of y'all
Yeah.
that like if one is there, almost all of y'all are there.
Yeah.
They have the is it like I think you guys make your fufu differently.
Yeah.
What do you make it out of?
We make it with what is it? Plantain, yams, and I think cassava. But you might have to correct me on that one. I'm not sure.
So
Yeah,
that means you cook.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Mm.
hmm
Okay, okay, that's
Yeah.
good. That's good. That's cool. Wow. Okay. So, have you ever felt like you were different, even amongst a group of Ghanaians?
Oh, of course. I mean, like, I don't speak Chi, so that kind of already, disclaims you in a large portion.
Yeah, large portion.
And I mean, there's reasons why I don't speak Chi. I mean, some of it is just I grew up in Zima, so I speak in Zima,
Right.
and I moved here kind of young, so the languages I knew were languages in my household and in school, which is English.
Right.
Then part of it too is like being in Zima, you're the minority in Ghana, in terms of the other cultures or in the other languages. So I always like found it interesting, like an Nzima would move and he would start speaking Chi, then lose into Nzima. And
Mm.
like from a young age, I always saw that and realized that. So a part of me just never wanted to even speak Chi to lose my Nzima. Nothing against yo.
Okay. Okay, that's really cool. That makes sense.
hmm
I didn't know that y'all were like a small part because I mean here in Georgia y'all are large, so
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Whenever you see your people, you just kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, that's cool. That's cool. That's cool.
But I mean, then that's what makes us feel large, because in Zimas we are always together. We're always a tight knit community. Everybody knows each other. I always say you can't be a serial killer as an Enzima. Like people are gonna know as soon
I'm
as
telling
soon.
you.
hmm
Yeah, no, that's a bit about the Ghanaian culture. It's because even like in America, because we're so close knit, like everybody knows almost everybody's business, whether it's gossip, whether you told
Yeah.
somebody, it's a very tight community. So like my
hmm
church, we're mainly like 99.8% Ghanaian,
Yeah.
and that's just how we do it.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the things you love about Ghanaian culture is that no matter what state you go to, you're gonna find a Ghanaian community, and you're
Come
gonna be a part
on.
of them, and you're gonna belong.
Yeah. No, I think one thing I really do love about like African culture is our pride.
hmm
Like, if anything, it used to be different back in the days because it's just like whenever you're in
hmm
America and people find out you're African, you get the African booty
Yeah.
scratcher, you
Oh,
get
what? Don't remind me.
you get the ow ow one, all the sounds.
Yes.
But I think for me, African culture, like you won't know me for more than a day without knowing that I'm African because like I have like this African accent that always comes. I'm like, what are you talking about? And
Yeah.
it's just natural. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, come on. What is not to love about the continent of Africa? It's the starting point of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Everything starts in Africa, whether you like it or not. It's scientific, it's fact.
Mm.
Everything started there, and God started the world to me in Africa. And you want to think about the people in the Bible, they're African. Middle Eastern people, they're African.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, to me, Africa is the source of so many good things, so many good people.
So let me throw this in there because I hear this a lot that Christianity is a white man's religion and that they didn't know Africans didn't know Christianity until the Europeans brought it. So like, what is your standpoint on that?
I mean, I don't want to get into all the stuff, but there was Christianity before white people came to Africa. And I mean, even if you want to say that, like, Christianity started with Christ. And where was Christ? In Jerusalem. And where is that closer located to? Europe or Africa? So, I mean,
Mm.
and even Christ himself, there's stories in the Bible. Even the story of Moses, there's a story about an African coming to the Pharaoh to come and give him a gift.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, Africans have been incorporated in the Bible. Now you can talk about how white men have made a white Bible, and you can argue that. But if you just want to talk about the Bible is white, that's just completely incorrect.
Mm. You know what you talk about. Yeah, I know you're into like history and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I think what you're saying is pretty valid. Because I went to like a seminar where somebody was talking about how Christianity is not a white man's
Yeah.
religion, and how we have like stories about the Ethiopian eunuch,
Yeah.
and if all these things were centralized around Africa at the time, like it's I think the stories that are in Africa are more trustworthy than those that are outside of that. So
Of course. I mean, it's a fact that when they were making slavery in America, they used the Bible to enslave their slaves mentally. Teaching them things like serve your master and being a good slave will lead you to heaven. And
mm-hmm.
don't want riches in your life. All those things are of the sinful man. Things
mm.
like that.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, diving into like a whole topic because I used to like have like Facebook arguments with people when they're just
Mhm.
like, I'm not gonna be a Christian because Christianity supports slavery,
Yeah.
and I would have to like let them know like Christianity is not necessarily saying go and be a slave, but
Mhm.
Christianity is it's a spirituality that allows for different stages
Yes.
of life. So whether you're a father, you're a mother, you're a daughter, you're a slave owner, you can be a Christian, and the Bible is going to show you how to live your life because it's targeted towards humans. It's not targeted only towards slave masters. And so I think sometimes even when we think of slaves, we often think about Africans and then African Americans and then white people, but
Mhm.
not forgetting that slavery is not just within American culture. It's not just within European culture, but African slaves had African slaves. And so if you have a prisoner in a culture or a prisoner in a country, and they naturally become a slave. And so I think sometimes we get too caught up with who is a slave and this American idea of who a slave is rather than knowing that slavery is culture.
Yeah. And I mean, slavery is always going to be there. Slavery is a part of the world. I mean, unfortunately, it just is. You're unfortunately you're gonna need it. This what we're recording right now is
Mm-hmm.
made of cobalt, and cobalt is digged up in the Congo by
Mm.
slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And you want us to put the phones down, but it's just a hard truth. I mean,
Sheesh.
many people don't talk about it, but there's people right now in the Congo, little kids digging up for cobalt so you can have a longer battery life, so you can have a new iPhone.
Sheesh.
And I mean, even if you wanted to give up the sacrifice of an iPhone, you're not changing anything. Slavery is bound to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's a part of the world. It's a part of the Bible.
Let's just talk about the cobalt in Congo because I just did research on that about how like we even use cobalt for Teslas,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like people like we have this marketing strategy in America where they tell everybody everything and then they believe it. They'll tell you that Teslas are sustainable, all this and all this, but then you go back to Africa where they're actually like tearing down forests and breaking up their land for that.
Yeah.
It's like okay, so you don't see the damage in America because it's happening in Africa.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, there's a great book called Cobalt Red, by this journalist. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name, but the book is just honestly fascinating. The amount of things you're doing over there, you
Mm-hmm.
would be shocked.
Wow.
They're basically enslaving their own country to profit off of this cobalt mines.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, at some point down, maybe 10, 20 years from now, the Congo will just become a mining district, and the
Sheesh.
people have no choice because that's the only job available.
And that's what's building their economy as
Exactly.
well. And so within my research, I looked up the Congo, I looked into Ghana, into Nigeria, and I think one of the main problems was like Asian countries like China. Oh, China's such a
Oh
powerhouse.
yeah.
China is investing billions of dollars into Africa. And the thing is, Africa has been the underdog for so long. So, Africans, we have this mentality of pride of like, oh, yeah, put me in the game. Even if you don't have the resources and the
Yeah.
funds, you would convince somebody that you're good for it and that
Yeah.
they're going to pay later. So, that's what a lot of these African countries are doing. They're receiving billions of dollars from China so that China could build infrastructure in Africa, which ultimately helps Africa. But then Africa is going into these debt traps where they're like having to pay billions of dollars, and 100 years down the line they're still not going to be able to like finish paying it, so we're indebted to China, and now China has like state owned properties in
Hmm.
Africa, so you could go to somewhere in Africa but like this area is Chinese property.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. Like you talk about that. That's like one thing I'm not gonna use the word hate because that's a strong word, but I dislike about my culture is that sometimes I feel like as Africans we have short term mentality. Like
Mm.
instead of, let's say, maybe trying to invest in our own digging supplies and our own infrastructure and setting up our own mines, we are letting China come in and
Mm.
buying up these contracts and low key buying up the country,
Mm-hmm.
instead of you trying to have the patience to, maybe you're not going to see those 100,000 come in your pocket, but your
Mm.
grandson will see 500,000 come into his.
Right. So then how do you feel about globalization? Because I feel like in order for a country to prosper, you do have to have partners and like trade with other people, even if it's outside of Africa.
But there's a way to do it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at America, what is America's natural resource?
Hey.
Nothing. I
Okay,
mean,
okay.
yeah, I mean, America doesn't have a lot of natural resources.
American runs on Duncan. No, like-
But I mean, they don't have a lot of natural resources. The most resourceful continents are Africa, arguably Asia, the Middle East with your oil.
Mhm.
So I mean, Africa is the most mineral resource continent in the world. But do we benefit from any of our resources? No.
Mm.
So you have to see how you're doing the global negotiation and partnership. America is friends with everybody, but what do they give up? They don't give up nothing.
Sheesh. No, that's actually facts. I think even when it comes into like the whole thing about like investing into Africa, Europe and Africa, I mean Europe and America are one of like the lowest investors. They don't invest as much because they contributed to slavery in the past, and so they're just kind of like,
They don't invest because they take.
"Eh, give me some, give me some, give me some." No, seriously. And I low key feel like it's all these other nations taking their share of Africa because within the like the what do you call it? Was it the Berlin conference that happened whenever they split up Africa? It
Mhm.
was Europe and America that were like the main people to the point where some countries still speak French because the France colonized and
Yes.
certain things like that. And so I feel like Africa and America they had their share, and so now it's China coming in to also do the part. But I don't know. I look at both sides of the spectrum because I know China is doing work. Like they're actually building Africa from the ground up. And you
Mhm.
mentioned that Africa could do this themselves, but I have like a few standpoints with that because I've read that Africa doesn't have the infrastructure and so they have to
Mhm.
go out, but like places like China are like, well, we're not going to show you how to do it, but you have to buy it from us in
Yeah.
that sense. And they don't know how to operate it, so now they're bringing Chinese workers back to Africa to build it.
Exactly. They're not gonna show you because they want you to bring back and buy the Chinese to come and build it and to come and get the contracts. I mean, look, you have to think of yourself long term. There's so many things that have stopped Africa. I mean, I don't want to get into like side of, a sort of conspiracy theory, but I mean, it's just a proven fact that the CIA was involved in taking down Ghana's first
Mm.
president, Kwame Nkrumah. And this guy was thinking about making Africa huge. He was thinking about having one currency for the whole continent, having a highway go through multiple countries, having dams built so we don't have to use energy and we don't have to have power outs. And he was in agreement with, the president of Egypt, all these presidents.
Mhm.
And surprise, surprise, they all got assassinated
Wow.
in, doing these planning. So, of course, people know the value of Africa.
Mhm.
It's the value of Africa has been there since colonization started, since people decided to get on ships.
Right.
So Africans know we have resources, and other people know we have resources. I'm not gonna say lazy, but we just don't have long term vision to see the
Mhm.
value of our resources.
Mhm. I do agree with the short-term vision because I feel like a lot of Africans wanted to get out of Africa because of poverty, corruption, and all the other things. And so they took their children to like Britain, UK, London, see now, London
Yeah.
gal, to America. And we prosper in places like in over here, Babatunde, Doctor Nigerians, all these
Yeah,
actresses and actors, they're all
of
like
course.
African. But then my thing is like, are we bringing this back to our country? Because like you could prosper in America, of course, because the
Hmm.
resources are there. But as an African coming from the diaspora, whether you're Caribbean, Jamaican,
Hmm.
African, Nigerian, South Sudanese, are you gonna go back and invest that back into Africa because that's where we came from?
You see, the thing with stuff like that, I understand why people don't invest in Africa
Mm-hmm.
because it just seems so much. Like, where do you even start?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you go? There's so many problems to fix. And even that, like, another thing with our people is like, we never feel like it's enough. You give somebody $200 and they see you making 2 million, they're going to be like, whoa, only
Yeah.
$200? Bro, it's free $200.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Africans, we just feel like, it's never enough. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you are right. People should start going back and invest. The amount of kids, like, if you think about it, our generation, we are one of the first few generations where we are American. We
Mm-hmm.
grew up. We have all the advantages of American. So basically, as 20, 30 years down the line, all of us should be going back to Africa and investing and making Africa look like how America's looking right now.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very, very true. you said something like, where do we even start? I know, because I think there's a lot of things that play into it. I think the corruption, it's almost like when you build something, it just goes into sinking sand. So it's like, how do you even build on something that's not firm? I think it comes with changing our mindset, because our mentality as Africans is we're never content. We're always probably looking at our neighbor and seeing that the grass is greener on the other side. This is why Africans are like this. And like, I've heard it so many times from Ghanaians. Ghanaians will never prosper because this about the politics. And it's like, yeah, but then what are you gonna do to change about it? So like, even in Kenya, there's this company called Genje Makers or something like that, and they take plastic bottles and then they mix it with sand, and then they make cement blocks, and so they put it back into their country, because they're getting a lot of plastic trash. So they take it, they make like infrastructure, what do you call it, pavement or something like that, and they're building their economy based off of the trash that they're getting. And I'm like, that mentality is so amazing, because you're taking trash and you're making something with it. So I feel like if we were to contribute something like that to like Africa, even this is like environmental issues. If we're to take that same mentality of taking trash and making something out of it, then Africa would be like Wakanda by this time.
Of course, but I mean, it's hard, because even the corruption thing, right? Like, let's say you get put on as a senator right now. You go in there, you try to change stuff. Everybody, what is everybody gonna tell you? Hey man, shut the fuck up and take your 200,000 and be quiet, because that's what
True.
And if you don't do that, you're just gonna get kicked out. And even if you say, I'm trying to get rid of the corruption, how long do you have until they get rid of you? So I mean, it's just hard. And when you're in that mentality of being down and being broke, like, you're not thinking about long term things. You're just thinking, hey man, let me get my $20 today and let me feed myself and be straight. So it's hard to look at the foresight, try to think of ideas like making plastic and sand and making it into pavement and all that stuff.
So then, do you feel like it's a facade to be here in America, and like being an African in America and like tasting all of what American has to offer, but knowing this is happening in the country? Like, how does that make you feel?
I remember the first time I landed in America, and I went, damn. and I was honestly like mind blown and blindsided by just like, this is possible. Like, growing up in Africa, like, you kind of know what America is, but you don't physically, you don't really see it. So when I came to America, I'm just like, geez, this is possible. And I'm always curious, how does America maintain, and how does America be great? At least to me, that's what I took from it.
I don't know, because I'm thinking like how here in America we're showing all this African pride and we're like so proud of ourselves, but then it's like, I almost see it as a facade. Like, we're doing amazing things because you have to get out of the diaspora in order to put back into it. But then it's like, if we're here and we're embracing all this African culture and beauty, but then there's still corruption, like, it's almost like a disconnect. We're just kind of taking the pretty parts and leaving the what's going on behind us behind us.
I mean, of course, and that's just. I mean, but that just comes with people. I mean, people are always gonna be like that. Like, like, you get on Twitter, somebody's mad at you for something you said, or like, oh, you didn't use the right pronoun or anything. Not to get into it, but man, there's serious problems out there. But those problems require serious efforts and hard effort. So people don't want to be serious about things. People don't want to really work hard towards the problem. They just kind of, like you said, they want the pretty side. Little hashtag here, little hashtag there.
Okay, no, that's serious. Yeah. So then, what efforts do you feel like, I mean, if you are making any efforts to put back into Africa?
To me, my efforts are all about me, because being African means that if I'm successful, the people around me are successful, and the people around me are also African. So I'm making African people successful. The thing with me, just like I said, it's too big of a problem to start with, at the top. You got to start with yourself. Let's just say, hypothetically, all the African kids that live in Lawrenceville right now, if we all make
we're in Atlanta.
All the African kids that live in Atlanta right now, if we all were to make 500,000 a year, that would help tremendously, because at least everybody would be sending some type of money back home. Everybody would have at least some type of cousin or family member they would try to help also get here. So honestly, making yourself successful is making Africa successful.
I think I like that because it dismantles this idea that in order to contribute to a problem, we have to go to the source like directly instead of starting with ourselves. Because I think oftentimes whenever I'm excelling, it's not that I get attacked, it's that things around me get attacked. And so now I go
Mhm.
back and I'm trying to fix that, not realizing that by me pushing forward and like still recognizing that there's a problem over here, but not like exerting all of my
Yeah.
energy here, I'm still able to bring myself out of that. So like the way I mentally think about that is like sometimes I feel like I'm bringing my family out of something.
Mhm.
So I think of myself climbing a mountain and like we all climbing a mountain,
Yeah.
but sometimes I think I see a rock stumbling towards them. And so I pick them all on my back and now I
Mhm.
can barely even climb this mountain.
Exactly.
And so I've had my friends try to encourage me like, put your family back down. Let them, you know what I'm saying, go through the struggles, but climb this mountain because when you get to the top, then you can have your bullhorn and say, get through this and this is how you do it. So
Exactly.
I just feel guilty sometimes knowing
Mhm.
that like I have to put them aside and then
Yeah.
push forward in order for the greater good of all of us.
Yeah. And I love that analogy. And just like you said, because like if you climb the mountain top, you can easily tell, step on that side, step on this side. This one, there's a little fall right there. It looks safe over here, but trust me, it's not. I was there.
Mm-hmm.
So exactly, that's a great point.
Yeah. So I think that's really good.
Mhm.
So with that being said, you mentioned you came to America at what age?
Around 7, 8.
Around
Yeah.
7, 8.
Yeah.
Okay. So whenever you came, I mean, obviously you've been here for like so many years
Yeah.
now. What do you feel like you've lost about your culture?
I mean, the language is one. Language in terms of my dialect, how I speak. Even my enzima is not as sharp as it was back then. Then, just I mean, you know what they say: when you're in Rome, do as the Romans. So when
Mm-hmm.
you're in America, you start doing as the Americans. There are certain things you might do, like talking how Americans talk, thinking how Americans think about certain things. And I always say like Americans, they have like big dick energy. They got big ball energy. Like
Mm.
like nobody can touch America, and they know it.
Yeah.
And like it gives you that confidence being an American citizen. Like
Mm-hmm.
no disrespect to any other country, American citizenship is the number one. No argument.
Hey, why?
Because America gives you every opportunity that you can think of. No other country. How many YouTubers do you know are making it in different countries?
Hey, I'm gonna Dubai. Like they're in Dubai. They're in all these
No.
places.
But I'm saying like, how many of them are making it without money? How many YouTubers do you know
Okay.
are starting off the YouTube and they blow up in Dubai? Or I mean, I'm not saying they aren't because there
Mm-hmm.
probably are. I mean, there's a whole bunch of YouTubers in the
Right.
UK and all that stuff. But just America gives you so many opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was watching America's Got Talent the other day. Like, come on, like what country gives you that?
I do love America's Got Talent. I don't know if I could fully agree with you just because I don't know. There's this
Hmm.
like anti nationality that like happens in America where when
Yeah.
you're in America, you're like, bro, it's not that great. But I think because you kind of tasted the contrast, you're able to say so
Oh
because
yeah.
you've tasted Ghanaian citizenship and then coming to America
Yeah.
and seeing the difference. So I feel like it's very valid for you to say that.
You know what I like about America? You eat what you kill over here. And like
Mm.
I have cousins that live in Europe and family that lives in Europe, and they always complain about like it seems like there's a cap off. Like you can't move classes in Europe. It's like
Mm.
wherever you start off with, or wherever you kind of get at, that's where you're at. If you were
Mm.
kind of middle class, maybe you can kind of move yourself upper class, middle upper class. If you're in low class, you're in low class. Maybe in America, broken. Tyler Perry was homeless.
Okay.
He has his own studio right now and
Yeah.
is becoming a billionaire. So
That is so true. I can say that for the people, the self-made millionaires here, they always started off as some, like Steve Harvey, Oprah. They all started with nothing, and now
exactly.
they're all here doing.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? See, I think you are opening my mind a little bit because this mentality of like America's not that great. That's kind of like my mentality sometimes,
Hmm.
but because I've been here for so long.
Yeah.
But whenever I'm able to like look at different countries and like see how things are over there,
Yeah.
I think I can taste the difference. Which is why I'm so bad. Like I'm trying to get out of America. Like I want to. I want to go to London, of course, because that's where I'm from, and I want to try places in Africa, in Europe, and Asia
Hmm.
because I know the culture is different and it produces certain people. So I want to see what in your culture is making you like this. Like,
Hmm.
why does everybody know Asians to be the smartest like group of people? Why are they coined with like tiger moms and
Hmm.
like they when you go to spelling bees, it's either Indians that win or it's
Yeah.
Asians. So I want to see what is in your curriculum that allows you to be great.
Yeah.
You
I
know.
mean, I'm not gonna speak for Asians.
Mm.
Obviously, I'm not Asian, but I I can say just from the little of Asian culture I know and Japanese culture I know, like Japanese, I'll say specifically Japanese people, they grew up in discipline. Japanese people grew up in as samurai, and
Mm.
growing up like that, you grow up like very disciplined and very goal oriented, and there's not a lot of distractions. Like for example, like when you're taking the SATs in Japan, there's no plane flights,
This one?
no planes in the sky. You know why? No
Oh.
distractions. They don't
Wow.
want any cars driving near the buildings, no
Mm.
planes flying across that building, because that's how serious they are about the education over
Wow.
there. So I mean, just things like that take you to the next level. Of course, you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna have that 4.0.
Ah, of course. I think one thing I do like about like African culture when it comes to like education is that we are a little bit more disciplined than I think I've seen in
Mm-hmm.
America. Of course, I'd put Asian and Indian at the top, but I can see that some Africans' parents are really like on it about education.
Yeah,
Like up until I mean even till now, I was gonna say up until college, like conversations with my dad are primarily about education.
of
How
course.
are your grades? Who are your friends? Are you better than them? Are your grades higher than them? And it's like they like my emotions, my feelings. No, it's about education.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do understand that like I think Africans understand that education is like really, really important,
Mm-hmm.
and academics is really what helps you in this country. So like with the mentality, you kill what you eat. I think they force us to kill a lot
Mm-hmm.
because then you have more to eat.
Yeah,
So
of course. And I mean, for Africans, education is your way out. You know, we don't have podcasting back home, and if you, even if you do, like, it's not popular. It's not gonna, grow up like it is gonna
mm-hmm.
here. So, I mean, education is our way out. So you harp on it. I mean, you look at every third world country; they focus on education because
That's
that's
true.
mainly all they have.
That's true.
Mm.
Mm, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of other outlets. You know, maybe an athlete, a little rapper, a little musician here. That's about
No,
it.
I'm so glad you say rapper because okay, so we're in Georgia. Oh, sorry, we're in Atlanta, and in Atlanta, every single person wants to be a
Mm-hmm.
rapper. Now, with that mentality, right? So
Yeah,
we're coming from African parents coming to America and
yeah,
they know that education is the only way. But then you come to America where you could literally like get rich off of anything.
yeah,
Some
yeah.
people music, some people education.
Mm-hmm.
So with this mentality that like everybody want to be a rapper, like I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm not gonna judge. I want to be a podcaster. So I mean, there like my thing is always like I love seeing entrepreneurs and I love seeing people self grow and self make their own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But my thing with rapping is just like it's fragile. You know, it doesn't honestly it doesn't matter how good of a rapper you are. It matters who you know and when you
Mm.
hit and the right time. Because there's plenty of people that can rap, but we only know a select few of people up there. So my thing with rapping is just if you're gonna be a rapper, make sure that you have the passion for it. Like that's exactly what you want to do and nothing else. And make sure that you can have an outcome of monies of somewhat, whether you're gonna be producing, featuring. There's lots of ways to get money in the music industry. So just know that find your way and find how you're gonna make it.
Mm-hmm. I think I like the fact that you said like diversify yourself in the music industry.
Yeah.
You could be a producer, you could be a technician, but it doesn't necessarily have to be on the mic. And one thing that I always encourage people is do what you're called to do. Like find your purpose. I know that everybody in Georgia, your purpose is not to be a rapper. Like sometimes if you have to chase the beats, oh
Mm-hmm.
please, you're not meant to be a rapper. And there's moments where I've heard people and I'm like, I would buy your music.
Mm-hmm.
Like it depends, you just have to make the music sound good. If I could tell that you and music are married,
Yeah.
okay. Now, if you're the one you are chasing, struggling, you could do music, find something else though,
Mm-hmm.
And so I agree. I feel like America's a place where you can literally do anything and you can make it. Like podcasting, I really do feel called to this, and I feel like one day I'm gonna look back at these videos and be like, wow, I was in this room with like my mom's clothes in the back,
Exactly.
and I don't know. I feel I'm so passionate about just doing what you're called to do.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like I always say, like one thing I would love to have in life is to know what my passion is. Because it's rare to really find your passion and to be honestly like knowing that this is my passion. So if you are a rapper and you feel like that's your passion, then just follow it. But at the same time, like to me, I don't stress about it because the industry and people will tell you how good of a rapper you are. You know, when it
Mm.
comes to entertainment, people are gonna decide whether you're an entertainer or not, especially if
Mm-hmm.
you're a paid one. So you can be a rapper all you want, but there's gonna be a time when the bills are due. So
Sheesh. Okay, come through with the hard stuff. Okay. So in America, you said that it's easy to go from nothing to something.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you, like, with your radio technicianness and wanting to be a podcast,
Yeah.
how are you trying to combine the two?
Well, I mean, radiation technician is a job to, for my financial means. Because just like you want to be a rapper, just like, anything in entertainment, it takes time, it takes growth. You're not going to, there's very few people that start off and blow up and you making money from it. And
Right.
even people that do start off and blow up and sometimes not making money. So this is the radiation technician is basically my money line. Then over time, I hope to, have more money and have more access and grow my podcast, and it will be something where I can actually get revenue and get paid from it.
Mm-hmm. So you feel like, or not you feel like, so you pretty much have like a career where you want to have sustainable income, and then you have your passion where it will also bring income from that too, right?
Yeah, because honestly, a lot of times passions don't pay. I don't know a lot of people that have a lot of passions, and it's just like doctor. I mean, there's doctors that are passionate about their jobs, but
Right.
a lot of time you're passionate about like things that are entrepreneurial, or
Mm-hmm.
starting your own business, singing, writing, podcasting, making movies, becoming an actor, and those
Mm-hmm.
things take time, and you need money. I
That's
mean,
true.
yeah.
I like the fact that you're saying that, because I feel like my mom and my family has like defied the odds, because she always wanted to be a hairdresser, and then she became one, and so we have our own salon and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
before my eyes, I can always see passion and payment together. Like, and that's why I enjoy braiding hair too all the time, because not only am I doing somebody's hair and getting money, but it's the art. It's like
Exactly.
somebody's coming to me and they're like, "Girl, I got you. You gotta do this."
Hmm.
And when I'm done, they're like, "Ah!" So to see the transition from like, "Girl, get me fixed up," to, "Wow, I'm ready to go outside and be
Yeah.
outside," I feel like that's my passion, to see people happy, and then I'm also having conversations while I'm also doing their hair.
Yeah.
Plus, it pays the bill,
Yeah.
and so I'm such an advocate for like, I'm an advocate for passion paying the bills.
Hmm.
However, I know that that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's not realistic in many cases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, they say when you're doing something you love, it's not work. So I mean, you just gotta find something you love, then try to find the like. I would say don't look at the money. If you're really striving, like I'm trying to think. Joe Rogan, he's a huge number one podcaster,
Okay.
huge comedian, and like I've listened to his podcast for so long, and I went back and listened to like his first episode of his podcast. It's just a webcam and him and his friend, and they can't even figure the thing out, and they're just talking.
Yeah.
But I mean, this guy now it's a trendsetter. He's a culture setter. Like during COVID, like people were looking at him for COVID medication and how to deal with it.
Mm.
So I mean, and he always talks about like, man, like I didn't start a podcast for anything. I just wanted to have fun with my friends and talk. And now makes like what 10, 60 million an episode.
Huh?
Makes crazy money.
See,
Joe Rogan, he signed like if I'm not mistaken, like almost 200, $300 million deal with Spotify.
hey,
Yeah.
Spotify, please sponsor me. I need cameras. I'm just using my phone.
Yeah. So I mean, and he like you can if you ever listen to him, like you can genuinely tell like the guy is not necessarily looking for money. Like everything
Yeah.
he does, he's doing for fun. Like he's a commentator for the UFC, and
Mm.
he started it like when the UFC was nothing. Like he
Mm-hmm.
said he had to take like little airplanes to Nashville, and it was like some dingy bar in the bag, and he wasn't getting paid anything. He would pay to
Wow.
go there, and now the UFC is number one. Everybody
Wow.
watches the UFC. It's on ESPN. It's the best fighting. Arguably, it's taken over boxing.
Right. I think it's so important to like, when it comes to passion, not doing it for the fame and for the
Exactly.
money, because like I feel like whenever people are motivated by the money and motivated by the fame, it kind of, your intent changes what exactly that you want to do. So if you're just, doing what you're doing just to become rich and famous, then it kind of defeats the purpose of putting the passion into something. So for example, if I was only braiding hair just for the money, then I feel like regardless of how your hair looks, I'm getting the money and I'm leaving. But
Mhm.
because I care about what people think about their hair, that's my main focus. So there have been times where like people walk out, I'm like, "Hey, did they pay me? Let me
Yeah.
go and get the money." So yeah, I just feel like your passion should be driven by like your interest, your heart, and actually wanting to do
Mhm.
something. And then the accolades will come later. Like, they will come.
Yeah. And to your point about the fame and the money, when you're doing it for the fame and the money, there's always a cap off. There's always a level of fame you're gonna get to, and there's always a level of money you're gonna get to.
Yeah.
And I mean, you might And when you do get to that, you see some people like they get to that level of fame, you see them fall off because now there's no more drive, there's no more motivation because they've lost the passion because all they were thinking about was let me just get famous. Or some people they get to the money and they're not as innovative, they're not as hungry as they used to be because all they were thinking about was the first million.
Okay. Someone, I be having these conversations. It's like, do you go for, is it passion or money or success and happiness? Okay. They were talking about success or happiness. Should you chase success? Is it money? One of the two.
Mm-hmm.
But I asked them, why did a millionaire like Robin Williams kill himself? Why
Yeah.
did Twitch kill himself?
Mm-hmm.
They had the money, they had the resources to fix their problems.
Yeah.
However, just the money is not enough. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't have an internal security and like even a spiritual connection to God, all that is just waste. And I mean, the Bible just mentions that silver and gold, like all that stuff, like you can't die with it. When you die with it, where like it's just gonna be in the grave. So I don't know, when it comes to things like that, I'm just so passionate about like have it, let it secure your soul, let it fulfill you, because the
Mm-hmm.
accolades and the money, those will be there, but that's not what it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And to kind of play devil's advocate, sometimes, it's not necessarily a bad thing to be driven by money and fame because, some people that you just need a drive. Like you, as a person, you got to have a drive. So if it's the money pushing you, just make it, I guess, refigure in terms of thinking about how is this money going to help everybody around me? Or if you're just that type of person, selfish or something, just be like, what's the most money I can get? What's the
Mm,
most money I can keep on getting and keep on getting and keep on getting? Because I mean,
mm,
honestly, money is everything to some people, and I
mm-hmm.
understand money rules the world, so I get it.
So with that being said, so you know the verse, the love of money is the root of all evil. It's not
Mm,
necessarily money, but the love of money is the root of all evil.
yeah.
If money is your drive and money is your motivation and you
Hmm.
have this desire and like deep wanting for money, how could something not go in an evil direction, or how can your intentions be pure if money is your like desire or motivation?
Because money, just like anything physical, it depends in whose hands it is. A gun is
Mm,
not dangerous. It's who's holding the gun.
yeah.
So money's not dangerous. It's who. To me, money's not dangerous. It's who's holding the money.
Right.
And usually, people that are driven by money, they're trying to either get themselves out of a situation or get loved ones out of the situation. And I mean, of course, there's evil things that come with money. But it's just who's ever holding it and how you're thinking about it. Like drugs don't drugs are drugs. There's no good drugs, there's no bad drugs. Any bad drug you're thinking of, you can find it in a medication you take.
Mm.
But it's just how it's being used and how much of it you're consuming. And money's the same way.
Mm. I think I like what you mentioned with the example of like, let's say someone their motivation is money to get some money out of something. I think the true heart intent motivation in a situation like that is rather wanting to get someone out of the situation and realizing that money is the answer, but it's not necessarily the love of money that keeps them pushing. Because if they just love the money, like they would just love the money, but because they love somebody else and they're trying to save them from a situation, that's where the money comes in. And so I always love to have this conversation about like, is money the root of all evil? Is the love of money the root of all evil?
Mm-hmm.
Because, we get to see where money plays a part. It's not
Mm-hmm.
dangerous until, it becomes,
Yeah, and I don't even think it's money. I think it's the problems that come with money. The things
hey, more
that
money, more problems.
yeah, more money, more problems. I mean, right now, if you got just 10 million sitting there doing nothing with it, no evil is coming towards you. It's when you got 10 million and, you got the private jet, you got the car, you got the partying, you got the family, you got everybody in your ear. The more money you have, the more people come closer to you. And that's just how it goes.
This life, that's honestly how it
Mm-hmm.
works. So, tying this back into Africa,
Mm-hmm.
Africa has a lot of, I want to say Africa has a lot of money and it also has a lot of resources. Why are we still in the same situation that we're in?
Because we're not using our resources and our money right. Just like if we go back to the previous conversations, it determines whose hands it is. Africa has been there before, let's say America. You know what I mean? Not
Mm-hmm.
and no disrespect to Native Americans, but the America we know. Africa was there before. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're getting a head start as a whole continent, how are you still lacking behind
Eesh.
America? It's the way America has done it. America has chosen to be smart about it, use your resources, have the right allies, and use the right amount of resources. You never see anything really coming out of America, but everybody's always bringing something into America because they
Mm.
know how to work with your allies and your resources without using all your money and without
Mm.
using all the things they need to use. In
Mm.
Africa, we don't do that. We don't know how to dig up our own gold. We don't know how to dig up our own diamonds. We don't know how to make diamond rings, diamond necklaces. We
Mm.
just outsource it to China, to America, and they come and take up all the resources.
Mm. This is interesting. So I'm a business major, and so whenever I look into things like this, I try to look for the transactional
Yeah.
aspect. When I did the research on my paper, I realized that the the narrative of transactions between Africa and other countries is that, well, the now with like the younger
Mm.
people, they believe like, okay, Europeans came to America, took Africans, brought them back to America, and then slavery and all that stuff and
Mm.
stuff. So people could easily try to dismantle the argument you just said by saying that, well, the foundation we have in America is
Mm.
because of the slaves in Africa. But I do want to challenge some people to understand that it wasn't that blatant back in
Mm.
the day, just as it's not as blatant now.
Yeah.
Um, because Europe came to, let's say, for example,
Mm.
Ghana, and they said, okay, well, you guys are drinking water from rivers and stuff like that. We can literally outsource water from here, here, and here. We'll give you pipes,
Yeah.
but you can exchange it for gold.
Yeah.
Now, if there's so much abundance of gold in Ghana, there's not much value. Like, we put it in our jewelry, we put it
Mm.
in so many things, but it's like, yeah, I can spare some gold. Okay, and y'all gonna give us sustainable water. And so
Yeah.
now Europe takes our gold. They
Mm.
give us pipelines. They make something out of that gold, but then they also sell it back to us. And we're
Mm.
like, oh, I didn't know you could do this with gold. Okay, keep taking more, and
Yeah.
we'll buy it back. And so we're getting these things from Europe, and
Mhm.
it's a transaction. We're getting things from them. They're also getting things from us. But then I think where we go wrong is that because they have the skill, they take the natural resources, they refine it, and then they sell it back to us. When we can learn the skill and then just do that and produce it. So okay,
Mm.
so you're saying something.
No, I mean you're on point. And to the previous statement about you can argue that Africans or the African Americans made America. They did. When you have free labor to make a whole country, you're gonna get pretty far ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and not to be harsh about it, but it's just fact. They use slavery in a smart way. There's plenty of countries that have had slavery and not have been to the standard of what America is.
Right.
So if slavery was a resource, just like it is to every other country out there, to every other African, Asian, slavery is a resource, and they use the resource well. We can't be mad at it.
So should Africa have slavery?
No, no. I mean, the thing with Africa, right, is that we've had so many setbacks because of because of Europeans coming and taking so many things. Like, for example, like King Leopold with rubber.
Mm-hmm.
He basically destroyed the Congo and Cote d'Ivoire by stealing rubber and by killing people just for rubber. But rubber makes so many things, and rubber makes tires. Just
Mm-hmm.
imagine if Cote d'Ivoire or the Congo had rubber and they were exclusively selling it. It would be a game changer for Africa. But we don't, because the Europeans came in and took it.
What do you mean by stealing? Would you say it was transactional, or was just like, yeah, I'm gonna take this?
No, no, no. He came, and over time he just slowly creeped his soldiers into the country, and just with fear and brutality, he just
Mm-hmm.
killed. Like, for example, if they caught you stealing back then, they would cut off your Achilles heel, so you can't run anymore.
Hey,
Yeah.
I feel
But
it.
but the people at the same time, the people higher up were accepting the brutality he was doing because they were feeding off of the money he was making.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hey, this thing is deep. Oh.
yeah.
So I don't know, transactions. I see it happening every day, no
Mhm.
matter what. Like I've haven't been to Ghana since I left, but I know that everyone that goes to Ghana, they tell me like the Chinese are taking over it, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like because they're smart, because they're doing business.
Yeah.
And one thing Africa is not gonna do is say no to business.
Yeah.
But then it's like you have to realize there's the assimilation and there's the acculturation of culture. So like sometimes on WhatsApp, my parents would get these videos of like a whole Asian choir singing songs
Yeah.
in tree, and we're like, wow, that's amazing, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, it is.
But then it's like, what part of our culture are we also losing in this transaction that we have with these Asian countries?
Mhm.
Like they have this machine that makes fufu for you. You just put in and it pounds it, and it just fufu comes out.
Yeah.
But there's the African mentality of like, no, this is the way we pound fufu. I'm gonna
Yeah.
put my blood, sweat, tears into
Mhm.
making it. So it's like, do you go with innovation in the sense of like, okay, they're bringing a machine. We get to lose the culture of the way we pound it and put our strength in it
Yeah.
and do like and get convenience, or are we going to stick to what we know so that we can maintain our culture?
I mean, to me, culture is not really something that is set in stone. Culture can
Mm.
be changed. Like for example, to go back to Japan, there was a point in Japan where they had to, because Japan was a very isolated country all by itself. They had to discuss whether we're going into the new world, we're going into ships, businesses, everybody's putting on a suit, or are we sticking with our samurai culture? And
Mm.
if they had, Japan would have been trashed today, because Japan is the technology capital of the world now,
Wow.
because they at some point they decided to completely change up their culture and completely bring in technology and completely innovate. So I mean, with Africa and the Chinese, I mean, at some point we might not be doing the same African things. You might not see somebody stomping or
Yeah.
climbing up to get the coconut. It might
Yeah.
be a machine doing it. But if that's what it takes for our people to be in a better place, I'm okay with that.
I think it makes me scared. Like, it's just like, how much do you have to sacrifice in order for there to be improvement and evolution? Because evolution, you need it. Like, there's no way
Hmm.
we can still do the same things that we've been doing 100 years back. But then it's just like, how much of your culture are you willing to maintain and to lose at the same time? You know?
To me, I think at some point, I don't know how long, but the world will get to a point where everybody is kind of not the same culture, but kind of the same. We
Not
all,
important.
yeah, we're all just gonna be a huge melting pot at some point. I feel like it's just inevitable with the amount of technology and the amount of things that happen. I mean, it's gonna happen. Like the greatest empire, the Genghis Khan Empire. The
Mm-hmm.
empire was destroyed not from battle or anything, from a simulation. From basically the Khans were going into Turkey and China and having kids, and they just lost their culture.
Wow.
The empire fell apart because they decided to assimilate and get
Mm.
into different cultures.
Interesting. I find that very interesting. It makes me think of jollof sushi. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I've never heard of it.
So it's sushi but with jollof, and
Yeah.
I think instead of like the other stuff they put in it, you can put like cocoa and like meat and
Hmm.
stuff like that. And it's like that's an assimilation of two different cultures. That's Asian culture with the sushis, but then
Yeah.
that's African food with the
Hmm.
jollof rice and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think it's exciting yet scary at the same time to think that cultures are merging. I mean, we have mixed people. We have
Hmm.
people who are like half African, half Nigerian,
Yeah.
half Ghanaian, half Nigerian,
Hmm.
and I think it's a beautiful thing because we find a way to take the best and the worst of different cultures and bring them together in
Hmm.
the sense of black and white people. Of course, they try to keep them separate for as long as they could.
Yeah.
But there's so many great things about the black man. We strive, we fight, we're gonna keep going. We have this "it is what it is" mentality, so we don't
Yeah.
necessarily complain. We just kind of deal with it.
Yeah.
And then you have white people, the white man who has that power and has that authority, and they're respected in this country.
Yeah.
So when you bring a black person and a white person together, you're bound
Mhm.
to go further than just two black people, or even maybe just two white people.
Yeah.
Like, it may not show up how you think it is, but you get to think very, like, I think more vaster and more wider than two of the same type of people.
Yeah. And I mean, some things are gonna remain the same. Just like you said, black and white. No matter how far we get along in this earth, black and white is gonna be black and white. Black people are always gonna be not black people, but we're
Mm-hmm.
always gonna have our black culture, and white people are always gonna have their white culture. Like at the end, the white kids, they're gonna do some things black kids just will never do.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't matter where you're from.
Yeah,
It's just gonna happen. There's things Asian kids do that white or black kids will never do. So
that's true. Do you feel like you're adopting something that you're like, my Ghanaians would not approve of this?
um I honestly, like, to me, when it comes to my culture is Nzima culture.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, Nzima culture is keeping up with the Nzima tradition. So as long as
Mm.
I'm doing that, it doesn't really matter what other Ghanaians think of me. And on top of that, like, people change, people evolve. I'm not living in Nzima anymore. I mean,
Mm.
I come from a village of less than 500 people.
Wow.
There's a different way you act and you grow up when you come from that village instead
Mm-hmm.
of growing up in Atlanta.
No, yeah, that's really good.
What about you?
What was the question?
What is it? Well, what about your culture, or do you feel like Ghanaians will be disappointed in or get lost in?
I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I feel like there's certain things that I just choose to do in silence
Yeah.
because I know how Africans react. So like even when I when I dropped this podcast, they
Mm-hmm.
were like I didn't really broadcast it too much
Yeah.
just because I knew the niche that I wanted to reach, and I knew that if it got into the hands of some African aunties who probably disagreed with what
Yeah.
I
It's just
said,
gossip.
and I because I value like what elders say, I
Yeah.
don't want it to get back to me to the point where it's just like, well, can't talk about African parents anymore. They're offended.
Yeah.
Let me shut down this podcast. But then
Mhm.
I realized that a lot of African children are coming to me and they're just like, bruh, my mom does the same thing, and
Yeah.
we can relate on that, and we can grow further because we have the same experiences. But if I
Mhm.
were to only focus on the fact that Ghanaians are gonna gossip about my podcast, they're gonna say whatever they want, they're gonna tell my mom to tell me to shut it down,
Yeah.
then I might as well just not tell you. You're gonna figure out about it one day.
Yeah. And I mean like you change and you learn as things around you. Like when I was a kid, everything that had to do with drugs were bad to me. Everybody that did drugs were bad to me.
Mm-hmm.
But then I came to America and there's people around me that smoke and drink
Yeah.
and do things worse than smoking and drinking.
Mm-hmm.
But I see them and they're good people.
Mm-hmm.
They just might happen to be a weed smoker or an alcohol or they just might just happen to have doing drugs.
Mm-hmm.
But I've changed my mentality in terms of that some people do drugs, they're still good people. Drugs don't define the type of person you are.
I think that even introduces like a whole different topic of like how Africans see certain things. Like if you have locks, all of a sudden you're a vagabond and you smoke
Yeah,
weed and you're like somebody
exactly.
out in the streets.
Mhm.
And so I think sometimes whenever we are being raised here and like our mind is changing, we have to not necessarily like go back to what we thought something was, because then you will never prosper. Like you
Yeah.
got Burner Boy out here with locks. Like that's
Exactly.
amazing. You
Mhm.
have like people out here changing the way we do things. I think Wendy, isn't it's not Wendy Shay. Is this one African artist singer that died?
Yeah.
Do you know her?
Ebony.
I think it was Ebony.
Yeah.
She had locks too, and I'm telling you, since then I've never seen so many African girls with locks as well.
Yeah.
Like so, I think, like you said, culture. I wouldn't say it's fluid, but it's changing,
Mhm.
and I think that it's important for us to evolve with culture and determine for ourselves what part of this do I want to keep, what part do I want to like sacrifice for the greater good. If I'm gonna be a Ghanaian that makes it, I'm gonna make it, but I'm gonna do away with the gossiping because I know that's part of my culture, but I'm not gonna
Yeah.
tune into that. So.
Mhm. And some things just come with the territory or just the environment of where you are, where you're raised. Like I think to me, gossiping as Ghanaians come because we're so a tight knit community. Everybody kind of knows each other, so you're
Mhm.
kind of just like your friends. You're gonna talk about
Mhm.
each other. Just accidentally. It's just part of it. And like I mean, and I'm pretty sure gossiping is part of every culture. We just might be a little above.
We just might be,
Yeah, we just
yeah.
might be a little above some others, but yeah.
Okay,
hmm
that's
And
valid.
I mean, and so like I said, some things will just never change. Like for example, funerals. Where Ghanaians are not gonna change. Ghana's the funeral capital of the world.
Shut up.
Yeah, for real.
What about it?
We have the most funerals in the world.
Hey, go for a bit.
I might be wrong about that, but
Please.
I remember watching a video and it was saying that Ghana's the funeral capital because you know how we have the crazy coffins and all that.
Yeah.
And that's what the video is talking about, and the video was just talking about how they make those coffins, and it was saying Ghana was the funeral capital of the world.
So are you saying like more people die in Ghana or like
No, just we just have the most
Oh,
funerals.
thank
Yeah.
you.
No.
I was like, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus, but
No,
no,
no.
I think we are very extravagant with the way we do
Yeah.
funerals.
Mm-hmm.
Got the dancers and the
Yeah,
caskets.
and the dance, all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, and we're not gonna change that, and I don't want us to change that. I don't want to go to a white funeral. No offense to white people, it's boring and sad. Everybody's grumpy. Everybody's resentful. In Ghanaian funeral, it's happy, smiles. Everybody's loving.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's pretty valid. Okay, well, do you have any last words?
No, I mean, I would just honestly say like, stick with your culture, and try to develop your culture. Don't be embarrassed of it. And there's just some things of your culture that, just like you said, you might have to adapt. Life is adaptable, so can be your culture. So yeah.
Okay, and I'd also probably even wrap up by saying like being African, there's so many good things, and then there's also quite a few things that we want to change, but nonetheless, that doesn't take away the love that we have for Africa.
Yes.
And so, like, if you are African or if you are even like mixed with African, learn about your culture, but also don't be afraid to learn about other cultures as well. Because if you stick to only your culture, you will only go so far. And so, move with the world, move with the globalization, get into technology, get into podcasting, whatever it is. Don't let the people from your country stop you from achieving your dream. Because then at this point, just go back to Africa and do what they're doing. Like, you know what I'm saying?
For real, you're right.
So, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. I hope you've learned something. I hope you walked away encouraged. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments. And yeah, so this is Sab.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Charles.
wait. Okay, so this is the outro. I say my name, you say my name. I
Okay,
say my
alright.
outro, you say outro. So this is Sab.
This is Charles.
And we're out. Peace.
We're out.